The galaxy was old, older than anyone could truly imagine. Stars were born, burned bright for millions of years, and then collapsed into silence. Civilizations followed the same path. They rose with great pride, built wonders, and then faded into dust. For the alien archaeologists who traveled among these ruins, history was their treasure. They searched through broken cities, shattered monuments, and forgotten temples, trying to piece together who came before them. These archaeologists were not soldiers. They were not rulers. They were seekers of truth. To them, every broken artifact was a voice from the past, every ruin a memory. The galaxy was full of such memories, but not all were treated with the same respect. Some civilizations were honored. Some were studied, and some were ignored. Among the ignored was Earth. When the name of humanity appeared in old records, the scholars would laugh. Humans were seen as weak, fragile, and unimportant. Their world was small, their bodies soft, their weapons primitive compared to the mighty empires of the stars. To the grand civilizations that ruled the galaxy, Earth was nothing but a footnote. In the vast halls of the Vayari Academy of Archaeology, where star maps of lost empires glowed on tall crystal walls, humanity's name was missing. Their history had been pushed aside, their story silenced. When students asked about humans, the teachers would shrug. They were nothing, the elders would say. They came, they struggled, and then they vanished. They left no great empire, no shining cities across the stars. Why waste our time on them? And so, generation after generation, humanity was forgotten. But history has a way of returning. On the desert world of Koresh, under the burning red sun, a team of archaeologists dug into the sands. The ground was harsh, the wind hot and bitter, but the work continued. The Vayari people were used to harsh worlds, and to them, Koresh was a treasure chest of secrets. At first, the archaeologists believed they were digging into the ruins of one of their own lost colonies. The broken stones looked familiar. The angles of the walls matched Vayari design. Yet as they went deeper, strange shapes began to appear, symbols carved into the walls, lines that did not match their language, curves too smooth, too exact. One young archaeologist, Lura, felt her heart stir. She was new to the team, her eyes full of curiosity, her heart always searching for meaning in forgotten places. As her hands brushed the dust away, she whispered softly to herself, "This doesn't look like ours. It feels different." Her scanner beeped, trying to read the marks on the stone. At first, the screen showed nothing but confusion. Then slowly letters began to appear, not in the Vayari tongue, not in any alien script known to the galaxy, but in an old, almost forgotten language that still held power. English. The words appeared clearly. "We were here. We saw. We endured." Laura's breath caught in her chest. Her hands shook as she stared at the letters. She had studied many lost languages, but this one she knew. She had seen it before, buried deep in forbidden archives. It was the language of the humans, the species everyone said was too weak, too unimportant to matter. Yet here it was, carved into stone, strong and defiant. The others gathered around. Some laughed, some frowned. "It cannot be," one said. "Humans never came this far. They were not explorers. They were not builders. This is a trick or a mistake." But Laura did not laugh. She placed her hand on the letters, feeling the grooves of the carving. She could almost feel the human hand that had cut those words into the stone long ago. For the first time, she wondered if the stories about humanity had been lies. The galaxy had forgotten Earth, but Earth had not forgotten the galaxy. Humanity had left a message, buried deep in the sands of another world. A message that whispered across time. We were here. And with those 3 words, the silence of centuries began to break. The desert winds of Koresh howled across the dig site, carrying dust that stung the eyes and burned the lungs. The archaeologists had uncovered ruins before, but none like this. Every stone seemed to whisper secrets. Every carving felt heavier than the desert heat. The words Lura had found, "We were here, we saw, we endured," refused to leave her mind. The others tried to dismiss it. They claimed it was coincidence. They claimed the carvings must have been left by some minor Vayari clan that had once copied alien symbols. But Lura knew better. She had seen Earth's symbols in forgotten data archives, buried under centuries of arrogance. The circle of blue and green, the language of English. It was too precise to be a mistake. That night, while the others sat around their lamps arguing and laughing, Lura returned to the stone slab. She brushed the sand away again, tracing the letters with her fingers. For a moment she imagined the human who had stood here. She imagined tired hands cutting the words into the stone, determined to leave behind proof of their existence. Her scanner flickered again, translating another line hidden beneath the dust. This time the words were even clearer. If history forgets us, let the stars remember. Laura felt her chest tighten. These were not the words of a weak or frightened people. These were the words of a species that had fought to be remembered. The next morning she showed her findings to the senior archaeologist, Elder Veyrak. His face wrinkled with disapproval as he looked at the translation. "This is nothing but human myth," he said, waving it away. "Their kind barely left their homeworld. Do not waste your time on fairy tales." "But Elder," Laura insisted, "the writing is real. The pigment is old, older than even our first settlements here. That means humans were on Koresh before us. We cannot ignore this." Veyrak's eyes hardened. "We ignore it because it is nonsense. Humans never mattered. They never will. Do you understand, child?" Laura bowed her head, but inside her heart rebelled. She understood what he was saying, but she did not believe it. That day the team dug deeper. The ruins stretched further under the sand than anyone expected. Tunnels appeared, narrow at first, then opening into chambers. The walls were covered with more symbols, some in strange diagrams, others in words the scanners struggled to understand. And everywhere the same script kept appearing. English. The other archaeologists grew uneasy. Some muttered that it was dangerous to disturb such ruins. Others began to argue again, louder this time. But Laura's determination only grew stronger. She wanted to know the truth. In one chamber, half buried under collapsed stone, she uncovered a strange circular mark painted onto the wall. It was faded, but the colors were still clear, blue and green swirling together. Her heart jumped. The image of Earth. She stared at it in silence, unable to breathe for a moment. This was no accident, no forgery. This was proof. Humanity had stood here thousands of years before. Her voice trembled when she whispered, "They wanted us to find this." That night she could not sleep. She sat outside under the red sky of Koresh, staring at the stars. Somewhere out there, once upon a time, humans had traveled. They had left their home to walk the stars, and yet their name had been erased from every story told in the galaxy. Why? The question haunted her. If humanity had been strong enough to travel this far, to leave messages carved in stone, then why did the galaxy remember them as weak? Why did the great academies of history pretend they never mattered? She closed her eyes and thought of the words again. We were here. We saw. We endured. Those words did not sound like weakness. They sounded like defiance, like a cry against time itself. Laura promised herself she would not let the voices of the past be silenced again. Whatever her elders said, she would follow the trail. She would uncover the truth about humanity, no matter how deep it was buried. Because in her heart, she felt something no one else did. An invisible weight in the air, a quiet presence in the ruins. It was as if humanity was still there, watching, waiting, whispering across the centuries, and their whisper was growing louder. The sun of Koresh rose slowly over the desert, painting the sand in gold and red. The dig site was alive with noise as the archaeologists worked, but the air was heavy with tension. Rumors had already spread about the strange carvings. Whispers of human writing moved through the team like a shadow. Most of the senior scholars refused to believe it. They shook their heads, dismissing the idea as foolish. To them, humanity was a forgotten mistake, a species that had never mattered. The thought that humans could have traveled beyond Earth to worlds like Koresh felt like an insult to their pride. In the main tent, Elder Veyrak stood before the team, his tall frame rigid with authority. He spoke loudly, his voice firm. "These markings are not human," he declared. "They are simply primitive symbols, copied from one culture to another. We must not let our imagination run wild. Humanity never had the strength to reach this far. They are myths, nothing more." The other scholars nodded, eager to agree. To admit otherwise would mean rewriting centuries of history, admitting that everything they had been taught was wrong. None of them wanted to face that, but Laura stood at the edge of the gathering, her hands clenched tightly at her side. Her heart burned with frustration. She had seen the writing herself, touched the carved words with her own hands. She had seen the circle of earth painted on the walls. Those were not accidents. When the meeting ended, she approached Elder Veyrak. Elder, she said quietly. With respect, you are wrong. The words are human. The pigments are older than our first colonies here. We cannot deny this. Veyrek's eyes narrowed. His voice turned cold. Child, you are letting hope blind you. Do you wish to believe in fairy tales? Do you want to shame our academy with wild dreams? Humans were weak. They lived short lives. They built nothing lasting. Why should we imagine they left their mark here? Lura's voice trembled, but she did not back down. Because I can feel it. These ruins, they are not ours. Someone wanted us to see them. Someone wanted us to remember. For a moment, Veyrek's mask of anger cracked and Lura thought she saw something else. Fear. But then he turned away. Enough. You will forget this foolishness. Continue the dig, but speak no more of humans. Do you understand? Lura bowed her head, though her spirit refused to surrender. That evening, while the others returned to camp, she lingered near the ruins. The desert wind swept over her, carrying a strange silence. She knelt before the stone slab again, tracing the words. We were here. We saw. We endured. Her heart whispered back, I believe you. As the stars began to appear in the sky, she noticed something new. At the base of the slab, hidden under a layer of sand, was a small marking she had missed before. Carefully, she brushed the sand away until a symbol revealed itself. It was not a word, but a drawing, a circle divided into blue and green. The image of Earth unmistakable. Tears filled her eyes. This was proof beyond denial. The humans had not only come here, they had left their world's image behind, carved into stone, a beacon for anyone who might find it. Lura pressed her hand against it and whispered, Why were you forgotten? That night she dreamed of voices. Human voices, strong, defiant, echoing through the ruins. She could not understand all their words, but she felt their meaning. They were shouting into time itself, refusing to be erased. The next morning, the scholars prepared their reports, carefully removing any mention of humans. They would tell the academy that the ruins belonged to a lost Veyari clan. They would bury the truth beneath lies, but Lura knew she could not stay silent. She had seen too much. She had felt too much. The galaxy might dismiss humanity. The elders might call them weak. But deep inside the ruins, carved into stone and painted in color, the truth was alive. And Lura promised herself that no matter the cost, she would bring that truth to light. For if humans had walked these sands once, then their story was far from over. The desert of Koresh had always been a silent place, but now it felt alive with secrets. Beneath the shifting sands, the ruins stretched deeper than anyone first believed. What seemed like a simple slab of stone was only the beginning. Lura could not forget the image of Earth carved into the wall. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the circle of blue and green. It was as if the humans had left it there for her, waiting across centuries to be found. The elders tried to stop her from going further. Elder Veyrek's warning still echoed in her ears. Forget this foolishness. But her heart would not let go. She felt a pull, a calling from the ruins themselves. So when the others returned to their tents at night, she slipped quietly back into the excavation site with only a lantern in her hand. The chamber was dark, the air heavy with dust. Her footsteps echoed softly as she moved toward the stone slab. She knelt beside it, brushing her hands along the ground. That was when she felt it, a faint, hollow sound beneath her fingers. Her pulse quickened. Carefully, she cleared away more sand until a hidden opening revealed itself. The slab was not just a wall. It was a doorway. With great effort, she managed to move the broken stones aside. A rush of cold, stale air poured out, carrying the scent of a place untouched for centuries. Lura lifted her lantern and peered inside. What she saw stole her breath. A tunnel stretched before her, carved deep into the rock. The walls were smoother than Veyari work, lined with strange markings that glimmered faintly in the lantern light. This was no ordinary ruin. It was a hidden chamber sealed away by those who had built it. Step by step she entered. The tunnel led down into a vast underground room. Her lantern's glow revealed objects scattered across the floor. Broken tools, fragments of metal, and strange sheets that looked fragile, but somehow still survived. She bent down and picked one up. It was thin and flexible, covered with faint writing. Her scanner hummed softly, struggling to decode the symbols. Then slowly the words appeared. If we are forgotten, let this remind them humanity walked here. Her hands trembled. She whispered the words aloud, her voice breaking with emotion. Humanity walked here? The weight of those words pressed against her chest. These were not ruins of some lost Veiri clan. They were human relics left behind as proof. She searched further. On a nearby wall, she found a sketch, hand-drawn, faded with time but still visible. It was a map of stars. The arrangement was old, far older than the current positions of the constellations. Yet she recognized it. It was the galaxy, drawn by human hands thousands of years ago. In the corner of the sketch, another message had been written. We saw much. We traveled far. Do not forget us, tears filled Lura's eyes. These were not the voices of myths. These were real people who had lived, who had walked across worlds, who had left their story in the silence of stone. She felt as though she could almost hear them, human voices carried through time, determined to speak to anyone who would listen. But another thought struck her, darker than the rest. If humans had traveled so far, if they had left relics across the galaxy, why had they vanished? Why had their story been erased from history? The question burned inside her as she knelt in the ruins. The galaxy believed humans were weak, but everything here spoke of strength, of endurance, of a will that refused to fade. She placed her hand over the fragile map and whispered, "What happened to you?" For a long moment the chamber was silent. Only the flicker of her lantern moved. But deep inside, Lura felt a strange shiver, as if the walls themselves were listening. And in that silence she realized the truth. The humans had not wanted glory. They had wanted memory. They had fought against the greatest enemy of all, being forgotten. As she rose to leave, she knew her life had changed forever. She could not let the elders bury this discovery. She could not allow humanity's voice to be silenced again. The galaxy had ignored Earth for too long. Now its forgotten children were speaking once more, and their words demanded to be heard. The ruins of Koresh had changed everything for Lura. What began as a simple dig had turned into a secret larger than she could carry. Every day more symbols and artifacts were uncovered, and every day the elders tried harder to hide them. But the truth was too big to bury. The word of humanity's presence spread quietly at first, whispered from one archaeologist to another, carried in fragments of conversation that drifted across the campfires. The elders warned against speaking of it, calling it dangerous nonsense. Yet curiosity grew stronger than fear. And then, the floodgates opened. Reports began arriving from other worlds. On the frozen planet of Yoros, a research team uncovered a shard of metal etched with English words. On the ocean world of Vareth, divers found a strange container buried deep under coral, holding fragments of human writing. Even in the heart of the Veiri Empire, inside an old storage vault, scholars dusted off an artifact once labeled unknown, only to realize it, too, was human. It was as if the galaxy had been blind for centuries, walking past these relics, refusing to see them. Now, with eyes forced open, the evidence was undeniable. Every artifact spoke the same message. Every word carried the same spirit. Humanity had not been silent. They had been leaving trails, leaving marks, leaving proof that they had once walked among the stars. The galaxy trembled with unease. In grand halls of learning, debates erupted. Some scholars insisted the findings were hoaxes, tricks of translation. Others argued that humans had clearly been greater than anyone believed. For the first time in centuries, the name of Earth was spoken with respect and also with fear. Lura watched this storm unfold with a mixture of pride and dread. She had wanted the truth to come out, but she had not expected how much it would shake the galaxy. One evening, as she sat in the ruins of Koresh, she read the words again on the old stone wall. "We were here. We saw. We endured," she whispered. "But why did you disappear?" The question haunted her every day. If humanity had been explorers, builders, and wanderers, why had their story been erased? Why had the galaxy chosen to call them weak when the evidence showed otherwise? The elders grew more desperate. They ordered the dig site to be sealed. They tried to silence those who spoke too loudly of the human relics, but it was too late. The discovery had spread beyond their control. One night, Elder Varric confronted Lura. His voice was sharp. His eyes filled with both anger and something else, fear. "You do not understand what you are awakening," he warned. "There are reasons the galaxy chose to forget humanity, reasons buried deep in shadows. If you keep digging, you will bring those shadows back." But Lura stood tall, Her voice was steady, though her heart raced. If humanity was strong enough to reach these stars, then their story matters. It does not deserve to be erased. We cannot choose lies over truth. Veyrak looked at her for a long moment before turning away. You are a fool. But perhaps you will see soon enough. After he left, Lura sat alone in the dark chamber, lantern light flickering on the walls. She could feel the presence of the past all around her, as if the humans themselves were standing there watching her, proud that she was listening. Across the galaxy, the unearthed relics grew in number. Each one whispered the same promise. Humanity had lived, struggled, and endured far more than the galaxy had believed. The question now spread from scholar to scholar, from world to world. If humans were so strong, what happened to them? The galaxy had ignored humanity for centuries. But now the silence was broken, and the truth, whatever it was coming. The ruins of Koresh grew quieter with each passing day. Many of the archaeologists had left, frightened by the growing debates across the galaxy. What began as a simple discovery had now turned into a storm no one could control. Some called it a miracle, others called it a curse, but Lura remained. She could not leave the ruins behind. She felt that there was still something hidden, something waiting deep in the shadows. One night, as the desert winds howled outside, she returned once again to the underground chamber. Her lantern flickered against the walls where human words had been carved long ago. She walked slowly, her hand brushing the cold stone until her fingers touched something strange. At the farthest corner of the chamber, buried under dust and rubble, was a small sealed capsule. Its surface was smooth, made of a metal she did not recognize. It seemed untouched by time, as if it had been waiting for her. Her heart pounded as she lifted it. It was surprisingly light, yet it hummed faintly. Alive with old power, she carried it carefully to the center of the chamber and brushed it clean. On its surface, faint letters appeared. English letters. Her scanner translated them softly into her own tongue. For those who come after, for those who will listen. Her breath caught. She pressed her hand against the capsule, and it clicked open with a gentle hiss. Inside lay a small device, still glowing faintly despite the centuries. Her trembling fingers reached out and activated it. The chamber filled with light. A flickering image appeared, hazy at first, then clearer. It was a human. His face was tired, lined with scars, but his eyes burned with strength. His clothes were simple, worn from travel. He stood as though the weight of the universe rested on his shoulders, yet his voice was steady. "If you find this," he said, "then humanity has fallen silent." Lura froze, staring at the figure. His voice echoed in the chamber, deep and full of emotion. "Know this, we were not weak. We were not broken. We fought wars against the darkness you do not yet understand. We stood where others would not. We carried the fire even when it burned us to ash." His image flickered, but his eyes never wavered. "If our name is forgotten, it will not be because we failed. It will be because we gave everything so that others could survive. We endured storms no one else dared to face. We stood against enemies that would have consumed you all." Lura's throat tightened. She felt tears in her eyes as the man's words filled the silence of the ruins. "Do not call us weak," he said firmly. "Do not erase us. Remember humanity. For one day you will need us again." The recording ended, leaving only the flicker of Lura's lantern. She stood there for a long time, unable to move. The human's words had pierced her heart like fire. He had spoken across centuries, as if he knew the galaxy would forget, as if he knew someone like her would one day stand in the ruins, searching for answers. Her hands shook as she held the capsule close to her chest. She could feel the weight of his words pressing down on her. Humanity had not disappeared because they were weak. They had been erased because they had carried a burden too heavy for others to understand. And now, their warning had reached her. When she stepped out into the night, the desert sky of Koresh spread wide above her. The stars glittered cold and endless. She looked up at them, and for the first time, she did not feel alone. She whispered softly, "I will remember you." And though the wind carried her voice away, she felt certain that somewhere, hidden in the silence between stars, humanity was still listening. The galaxy did not sleep after the discovery on Koresh. News of the recording spread faster than light, carried through every channel, whispered in every hall. The words of the human echoed across worlds. "Do not call us weak. Do not erase us. Remember humanity. For some, it was nothing more than old pride from a forgotten race, but for many it struck like thunder. Entire species once dismissive of Earth now found themselves silent, unsettled by the message of strength and sacrifice. Lura became the voice of that message. She traveled from planet to planet, carrying the capsule and its recording with her. Everywhere she went, she played the humans' words, and every time, silence followed. On a council world where the great species debated history and power, the chamber fell quiet as the recording played. Alien leaders who once mocked humanity now shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some lowered their heads. Others clenched their claws or tendrils, unable to meet each other's eyes. When the image of the human faded, Lura spoke. Her voice was calm but strong. You have called them primitive. You have called them forgotten. But hear the truth, they were guardians. They carried fire when none of us dared. They bled for a galaxy that erased them. And now you must ask yourselves, what will you do with the gift they left behind? Her words spread like sparks in dry grass. Across the stars, people began to ask the same question. Who were the humans, really? What had they faced that no one else remembered? And why had they sacrificed everything? In time, statues were raised again, not out of worship, but respect. On distant colonies, children learned the story of humanity, not as a myth, but as a lesson. Soldiers carried human words carved into their armor. We endured storms. Pilots painted their ships with Earth's simple symbol, a blue circle, half covered in white clouds, shining like hope. But for Lura, it was more than history. It was personal. She could not forget the look in the human's eyes, even through the fading light of the recording. It was not just pride, it was love. A love for life itself, for a future they would never see. Late one night, on her journey back to Koresh, she stood alone beneath the stars. The winds of the desert swirled around her, but she felt only the silence. She closed her eyes, remembering the words. One day you will need us again. Her heart ached with a question she could not answer. Was humanity truly gone? Or were they still out there, hidden, waiting? The galaxy had erased them once. Could it be possible they still walked in the shadows, watching silently as the stars moved on without them? She pressed her hand against the capsule. It was cold now, silent, but she could still feel its weight. She spoke softly into the night. Your fire is not forgotten, not anymore. The stars glittered above her, endless and eternal. Somewhere far away, maybe too far to reach, a world called Earth once turned beneath those same stars. Its people had lived, fought, dreamed, and given everything. And though their voices had faded, their legacy had returned. The galaxy would remember humanity, not as ruins, not as myths, but as the unbroken heart that once beat against the darkness. And as long as their story lived, humanity was never truly gone.